The war of words between US and China is once again threatening to spill into a full-scale trade war. Oxford Economics warns that if tensions escalate, the US could face an economic shock comparable to the onset of COVID-19. Now, the latest flashpoint, China's decision to add licenses for exports of rare earth minerals, which are critical to the US defense industry, among others, and Trump's counter threat of massive tariffs on Chinese imports altogether. Both measures are set to take effect in November. But experts say that may be bargaining tactics ahead of the Trump-Xi Jinping meeting later this month. The stakes are high. China dominates global refined rare earth supply, making its export controls a potential choke point for global manufacturing. Oxford Economics estimates that if the restrictions are fully implemented, US GDP growth could slow by nearly 1 percentage point, while wholesale inflation could jump to double-digit levels, similar to the supply chain chaos seen during early 2020. Moody's Analytics adds that both nations are testing limits, using trade as leverage in a broader contest of power. Analysts say both sides are likely to step back before the damage becomes permanent. Oxford expects a new tariff truce to remain, which remains the most probable outcome, but warns of sky-high risks if negotiations falter. US job growth is already slowing and inflation creeping higher. A renewed trade war could derail economic recovery just as global markets stabilize. For now, both Washington and Beijing are posturing, but the margin for error is shrinking fast. Targeting cooking oil, Trump said Washington may cut some trade ties with China. In a social media post, Trump accused Beijing of deliberately avoiding US soybean purchases, calling it an economically hostile act. He added that America can also produce its own cooking oil and doesn't need imports from China. The comments signaled rising trade tensions between the world's two largest economies. China's soybean imports reached a record high for September, but Beijing largely skipped US supplies and renewed trade tensions. China has also implemented special port fees on US-linked vessels in response to US tariffs and restrictive measures on its maritime sector. The move aims to safeguard China's shipping and shipbuilding industries, which are vital to global trade. And Susan has more for this for us from New York. Listen in.
President Trump is reportedly considering ending certain trade ties with China, particularly those related to cooking oil, as a response to Beijing sharply reducing U.S. soybean purchases. He described China's cutback in purchasing U.S. soy as an, quote, economically hostile act, and said on social media that the U.S. can produce cooking oil domestically without relying on Chinese imports. This would add another layer in the escalation in the long-standing trade dispute between Washington and Beijing, adding pressure to the agricultural sector as well and intensifying tensions. During a meeting with the Argentine president who was visiting the White House, President Trump also said that the U.S. has to be careful with China, noting that while he considers the relationship to be fair, China has a track record of trying to take advantage of others. Susan Takrani reporting from New York for WION World is One.